Hi, this is Beth from Around the Table Yarns in Shaker Heights, Ohio. Tonight is the last night of Sweater Club for 2024. We are finishing up the pattern Order of the Garter by Annamaria Ötvös, and we're just going to be doing some finishing details on the video tonight. So I'm really looking forward to getting started. The first detail we're going to finish tonight is on the afterthought pocket that we added. So in the past, I showed you how to add the afterthought pocket, how to pick up the stitches and work in the round. And then we were left with these stitches, and I've put them onto two double pointed needles. And what I want to do is actually do a 3-needle bind off. So I'm going to bind these stitches off using the yarn that's attached to them. And I'm just going to add another needle. And I was asked today what size needle, and you definitely want to use a size that is similar to or one up from the size that you used to work your pocket. So I just picked up a size 8 needle, and I'm going to do a 3-needle bind off. So a 3-needle bind off is half of the stitches on the needle closest to you and half of the stitches on the needle further away. I'm doing it inside out because when the pocket is done, the inside, the right side of the fabric shows in the pocket. And I'm really excited about this pocket because it's a cashmere alpaca silk yarn. It's so soft and it makes such a glowing little vision. And I just really love it. So to do the 3-needle bind off, you start with your needles pointed to the right hand side and you take a 3rd needle, 3-needle bind off, and you go knitwise through the first stitch on the first needle and then knitwise through the first stitch on the second needle. Give a little snug to the yarn and then you're going to wrap and pull through just one stitch. Now I like to make sure that I don't pop my stitches off the end, so I kind of use my finger and my right needle to pull them off. And then you're going to do the next stitch. Wrap, pull through, and off. Now, using one of the needles in my left hand, I'm going to pull the first stitch I made over the second one like a normal bind off. And that does not want, you don't want to make that tight because you want the bottom of your pocket to lay flat across the bottom inside of the sweater. You don't want it to bunch up or get pulled together, pulled tight together. So I'm just doing a nice, easy bind off. Bind off should never be tight, whether they're the bottom of a pocket or the top of a neckline. You should always try to have a nice, even, and uncinched bind off. So we just do that all the way across all of the stitches. I will admit that I just counted my stitches and I do not have an even number for both sides. One side has 19 stitches and one side has 18. So if that happens to you, and it could, I don't think I dropped a stitch. I think I just picked up one less than I thought I did, but it's one stitch different. I'm not going to go back in and change that. I could if I were feeling particularly picky about it, but I don't think I'm even going to notice that one pocket is one stitch narrower than the other. So I'm going to go all the way to the end. And when I get to the last few stitches, so there'll be one on the back needle and 2 on the front needle, I'm going to work the 2 on the front needle at the same time. So I'm going to knit 2 together on the front needle and go through the 1 on the back needle. And that happens just like this. So we're going to go knit through both. It's a little tricky. You know what? Knit through both. It's not, oh, there we go. Okay, knit through both. Ah! Did I go offline? I'm so sorry. Knit through both stitches and then through one. on the next needle. So I'm going through 2 here and 1 here, wrap and pull through. Your other needles can go away now. We're finished with them. You can pull that last stitch off, and there you go. There's the top, there's the bottom of the pocket. Now I have quite a long piece of yarn attached, but I'm just going to pull it through to finish the row. And that's the bottom of my pocket. So it looks like this. Okay, so now what do? I'm going to do a little bit of crocheting down here. I'm going to put my crochet hook in the corner, and I'm going to wrap and pull through 1. I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to pull my yarn through again. It was just to make a little bit of a more sturdy chain. And that is to secure, maybe I could do one more. Do one more. One more. Now I'll pull it through. I had too many earlier. All right. So that just makes a little sturdier chain of stitches at the bottom of my pocket. And I'm going to secure that to the bottom. It feels like it's. I'm going to secure that to the bottom of the sweater. Right there. And this is so the pocket is attached, but it's not. But it's not sewn in along here, and it makes it less visible from the outside. And I'll show you that in just a second. Okay, so here's my pocket laying down towards the bottom. I want it to come straight down towards the bottom, and I want to come into the stitch and into the bottom of that little chain that I made. So I'm right up above my I-cord edging, and I'm just going into the back of a stitch. I want to go through that 1, 2. I want it to be pretty secure. Pockets, you put your hands in it. Maybe I'm going to stick my keys in my pocket. So I'm going to do about 4 times around, and then I'm going to weave my needle up the chain that I made into the base of the pocket. And I'm going to weave it back and forth into the base of the pocket. So I might go down, up, down, 3 or 4 times, and then back the way that I came, this time really consciously splitting my stitches to secure that, the tail end of that yarn. So there's the first side of the pocket attached. And then I have the second side, but I have sort of a long piece of thread left. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put my crochet hook in, and I'm going to pull through a loop of the yarn. This way I don't have to secure it. I don't have to attach it to the pocket. It's already attached bottom of the pocket. And so that I don't have to repeat weaving in at the top twice, because I'm going to weave in the bottom. So I've done 3 chains again, and then I'm going to pull the remainder of the yarn out, and I'm just going to use both strands. I want to make sure this is coming straight down from the pocket. I think I might have put this in the wrong place. Ruh-roh. That looks a little angled to me. But what I want is for it to come straight down and attach to the bottom. Looks like I should redo that one. So I'm right at the bottom. And I go through that strand. This time, since I'm double stranded, I'm only going to go through twice. And then I'm going to weave it up into the base of the pocket and over to just secure the end. And then back on itself so it doesn't come out. Joke's on me though, because I have to pick this one out or leave it. It might be okay if I leave it. We won't pick it out right now. But that gives you, you can see that they are not firmly fixed to the base. They can lay flat. And what happens is that pocket, if I sewed the sides of it down, it would be very visible. There would be an outline of stitching around the pocket. And when you do it like this, it's like a floating pocket. It does not have that outline of stitching. But I will say that in picking this up, we found that there was quite a little bit of a hole at the top of the pocket on the side that we began on. So this was the pickup side, and I left a little bit of a tail there. So the first thing you can do is you can tighten up the tail, and then you can take a darning needle. And this is darning around an opening of a pocket. This can happen, on a sock. It can happen on an armhole, but you can see where my finger's coming through. So I like to just cinch an opening like this shut, especially if I'm using yarn that is not the same color. So I am taking my needle and I'm going to walk around this opening with it. I'm going to go through here and I'm going to turn it and go through here. And then I'm going to go through here. As you can see, I'm just sort of encircling the opening that's already there with my working yarn that's attached. And I'm just gently pulling it to the size of a stitch. So I don't want to yank it closed and pull it really, really tight. I want to pull it so it looks like the stitches on either side of it. And then this working yarn end, this tail end of this yarn, can be woven in back and forth to the top of the pocket, just like we did at the bottom of the pocket. So I just do these stitches back and forth. So I'm kind of going up and down and up and down and up, and then back across the stitches to secure it in place. When I cut my yarn, I usually leave about 1/4 of an inch, because you can see it's right there, because when you pull at it, it goes back into the knitting. It doesn't necessarily show through on either side. It just goes into the knitting and disappears. So there's the top of my pocket. I kind of love how it glows. Here's the one I did earlier. So both my pockets are done now. And I'm really excited about that. All right. Onto the sleeves. The sleeves we did back and forth. So we have to seam the sleeves, and we also added an I-cord binding. on the edge. And I want to just show how you can do a fake graft of the I-cord. It's essentially like doing a mattress stitch or a woven sleeve, a woven seam. So I'm going to attach the working yarn that's here. And I want to just show you this I-cord edging is 3 stitches. And the stitches are, go in a little closer so you can see it. So I'm putting my needle under the first stitch. So you can see that there are 2 legs of that stitch. This leg is very prominent, but there are 2 legs. So there's one here and there's one here. So this would be the center of that stitch. And then the next stitch is here, and this would be the center of that stitch. And the third stitch is here. So 1, 2, and then there's a third one here. So on one side, on the side where I'm attached, I want to come through the center of the stitch. And on the side that I'm trying to graft, I want to go around the outside of the stitch. So I want to find my first stitch on this side. So there's 1, there's 2, and there's the third one. I want to go around both legs of that stitch that corresponds to the first stitch on this side. And I'm going to go back down through the middle of this stitch and come out the middle of the stitch next to it, which is there. And I'm going to go back in where I came out of on the other side, over 2, so I'm going around the second stitch. I'm not coming through the middle of it, I'm going under both legs of it. Then I go back in where I came out of on this side and over to the middle of the next stitch. And then we finish again over here, going under both legs on the other side. So you go in where you came out of and over 2, and then back where you came out of again, and that's the end of the graft. And it makes a very smooth edging. And that's good for the beginning of the I-cord on any part of this. And then the nice thing about I-cord is it's a great place to weave in and put your ends. So if you weave your needle into the inside of that I-cord a few times and then just back it up, you can go right into the I-cord to leave your ends. And again, cut your tail. So that end is woven in to the edge of my sleeve. Now I need to actually attach another piece of yarn. That one wasn't long enough for me to do my sleeve seam, so I wasn't planning to use that for my sleeve seam. When you plan to do a seam in a woven mattress stitch, I'm going to back up again so you can see the whole thing. So here's my seam from here to here. So I want to use a piece of yarn that's at least as long as my seam, and then maybe a few inches longer, maybe 6 or 7 inches longer. So I'm going to take my working yarn and I'm going to measure off a piece that's longer than my seam and cut it. And that's what we're going to use to sew this seam. And when we sew mattress stitch on garter, you want to look, so we're going to be matching rows to rows. And in this case, we can be looking at our ridges. So here's a ridge. And then between the ridges and like here's the I-cord, but here's a valley and a ridge and a valley and a ridge and a valley and a ridge. And so I want you to be able to identify these on both sides. Here's the valley, here's the ridge, here's the valley, here's the ridge. So look closely at the ridges. That's what we're going to go for, is the ridges. And here you can see there's sort of an umbrella and a boat, and an umbrella and a boat. So on this side, we're going to pick the umbrella that's in from the edge. So I haven't attached my yarn yet, but I can attach it. Just attach it starting from my I-cord edge. So I'm going to just weave in my yarn to start with into my I-cord edge. Bring it out right at the beginning. Of my seam. Okay. So now I'm going to attach, I'm going to go into the umbrella on this side. And on the other side, I'm going to go into the boat. You can see I'm going into the umbrella, and then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go into the boat. That's a little too visible. Hold, please. I got to fix that. Coming from the inside. All right, into the umbrella, into the boat, into the umbrella, on the right, into the boat on the left. These are right at the edge. I leave it loose as I'm working for about an inch. So I might do 5 or 6 rows. So notice I've done this one, I haven't done this one. So when I've gone for about an inch, I want to pull more firmly on my working yarn and bring that, it makes it straight. If I need to see where I'm going next, I can pull it apart a little bit. And then I go back to my umbrella. And then my next boat. And my next umbrella. And you'll just do that right up to the end. And then weave in your ends like I showed you. But this is a great way to match up your garter stitch. And it makes it look like you worked it in the round. The seam is very inoffensive on the inside. That's my seam. So it makes a really nice seam. Later, when you are doing, maybe if you're doing some pressing or blocking, you might want to press to make it round outward because it does tend to fold sort of inside. And you might want to press it a little bit or block it so that that is a little bit more creased. So that you do all the way to the end, and I can show you, I did a little bit more of the one on the other side. It looks like that. That's what the seam looks like. Okay, so there's the pocket and the sleeves seamed. I don't know why this is sticking up a little bit, but maybe I can block it to go in. All right, so the last thing we're going to do is place some buttons. Borrow that back from there. Got some more finishing work to do. So the nice thing about this pattern is my buttonholes were set regularly every so many rows. So I've got one button in place. And so I can kind of find it. So it's 1, 2, 3 ridges down and 1, 2 stitches in. So I placed this button 1, 2, 3 ridges down in the valley between the ridges, and then 2 in the 2 stitches to the other side of the first 2. So I went 1, 2, and then I picked the next 2 stitches. So I marked that here. So one thing you can do is you can find the spot where you're going to put your buttons and then take a piece of contrast yarn and just cut, stitch it in place and cut it. That's a nice way to keep track of where your stitches are going to be. And then you can count again. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So from here it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's going to be in this spot. And it's going to be 1, 2 stitches over. So it'll be these 2 stitches where I want my buttonhole to be centered. So I just take a small piece of contrast yarn and place that. So I know where I want to put my button. I chose buttons for this project. If you had your buttons, if your buttonholes are in your garter stitch, then it's the same thing. You want to count the number of ridges, and then you can decide how many stitches in to place the button. But I think 2 in from the ridge and here is not a bad place. If you want to adjust the fit of your garment by having the buttonhole come over further or over less, that's up to you. But that's an option as well. I took my button collection and I sorted out and found a bunch of buttons that were exact same circumference, the same size, diameter, circumference, but slightly different colors. So I'm really excited about using them for this project because they're going to be each one's going to be a little bit different as I go. So I'm going to use that one next. And what I decided was that I was going to use the same working yarn. I like to use the same working yarn for putting in the buttons if I can get it into the needle. So that's the first trick, is to see if I can get it into the needle. Let's see if we can. Yes. And then the second trick is to be able to get it into the button. So here's where my button is going to go. I'm going to put my needle in there, and now I can move this out of the way. So I'm going to go there, and this button goes this way. So you can come from behind. I didn't. I should have. One second. I'm going to come from behind. I want to leave my tail on the outside. So there's where my spot is. I go through one side of the hole, and then through the other side of the hole, and then back through. I want to pull so I have a little bit of a tail there, and then I want to go back in and through the button a second time each. Ooh, pointy. So these are 2-hole buttons. Because I've doubled my yarn, I'm only going to go twice through. I won't be able to get through another time. And then actually with a button hole, with a securing a button, I'm okay doing a whole a square knot behind that button. And then I'm going to take my ends and weave them in individually. So I'm going to take this end and I'm going to weave this way. 1, 2, 3, 4 in that direction. And then come back on itself, kind of locking it into place, maybe even locking right back into the knot. I'm trimming it. Sometimes I leave my end a little bit too short, but that's okay because what you can do is do the needle part first. So I'm going to weave the needle in and then I'm going to thread it. Pull it through where you want it. Pull it through. Use all your strength. There we go. And then I'm going to weave it back in the same direction that I came from, back in the direction I came from, not exactly the same direction. And then again. So if you don't leave enough of a tail, you just work the needle part first and then pull the tail through. That secures the button really well. And that's how I'm going to add all of my buttons. So there are your finishing tricks for the Order of the Garter. The Project Monday Sweater Club will start again in January of 2025, and our first sweater is the Petunia Pullover by Einar Birkenbayeva. I'm really excited about it. It's this pattern. And Einar is going to come on. Einar Birkenbayeva is going to come on to the Zoom on that night to talk about her pattern with us. So I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. I hope you've enjoyed Sweater Club. If you have any questions, feel free to send a message to info@aroundthetableyarns.com for Beth, and I will be happy to answer them. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks.